Mr. Harmon, and today's ModTech Minute. We're recording live. We've actually got kids working, yes, as I talk to you about the printers. So, I've talked to you about ModTech being a makerspace and doing lots of things. So here you can see behind me, we have got the A8, and today I used the A8 to print a new part for itself. So we've got all the printers and we do all that cool stuff, but we also have lots of excellent things that the kids are doing in the modules. Right over here we've got Megan, and she is working diligently in the criminology module, and this is what we call the powders lesson.
Similar to a forensic scientist, she is analyzing how powders react to different things that we add to them.
So normally in ModTech we're all working on different things, but today we're working on audio tool. Yes. What has been excellent about today is we created a loop on the PC, and now we're using our Chromebooks to add our voice to the loops. We've got lots of kids doing other things as well, so once they completed the loops, they're allowed to move out into the classroom and do the other activities, like these gentlemen over here that are working diligently with our laser trap, and they're getting ready to set it up. So one of the beauties of ModTech is that I've got all the training recorded. So these guys are all listening to me, and they're able to work as I still walk around and help them. You can see on each station I've got a call light, and that's how they let me know that they need help.
And thank you, Anna, for the cool demonstration.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to episode 5 of the ModTech Minute. I have run out of printers to tell you about, so today I'm going to walk you through some of the steps I use to calibrate and keep the good old A8 printer working like it's supposed to. Alright, so I like to calibrate my bed using Cura 15.04.6. When I bring in any part, I can choose print, and then I can have it navigate to the different bed locations. I'm going to start without hitting print. I'm just going to tell it to go to X, and then I'm going to home, and then I can navigate across the board using these little rings. So I'm moving X across, I'm going to move a little Y, and then to test to see if you've got your bed right, you need to be able to push a piece of paper through between the bed and the print head and have there be a little bit of friction. Mine's a little tight, so I'm going to just tighten this a half turn and then test it again. And I like that. So I'm going to nudge across again. I'm going to go all the way towards the middle this time. And just test again to see how well it fits between the print head and the piece of paper. It's a little snug, so I'm going to tighten it down a couple more turns. Or maybe one full turn is a better way to say that. I like that. I can hear the friction of the paper. I'm going to come across to the whole other side, and I'm going to run the same test. This is how you calibrate a manual bed. And once again, it needs to be tightened as well. Having these little screws, these adjustment screws, makes this process so much easier. You can loosen and adjust as needed until you get the amount of friction you want on each side. And I'm happy with that, so now I'm going to move back more on the Y. I've only got my Kapton tape to the mid part of my bed, just because that's how I want to use this printer. There's my friction. I'm going to go towards the middle, making sure that I've got that same feeling of friction all the way across. So far so good. You get used to after a while which way to turn these. At first it takes some time, But eventually, you just get it down to a science. And then some days you'll find that just the temperature in your room, like my classroom, some days is cooler. That adjusted as well. And that's how you calibrate your bread. Alright, so another part of working with this printer is changing filament. Let me show you how I do that. Once again, I load a print, and then I go to the temperature, and I type 235 if I'm using ABS, or I do 190 or 210 or 215 if I'm using PLA. And then I simply hit the up arrow, and it sends the code for the printer to heat up. I'm going to use the jog controls to raise my Z up a bit so that I've got room to get my hands where I want. So I'm just tapping the 10 to lift it up. And then what I'm going to do is when it's warm, I'm going to hold my thumb and finger here while I push down the filament release, and then I push my filament in for a moment so I can see a little filament coming out, and then I pull the filament out of the machine. So right there, I just saw it hit 230, so I know that it is warm enough. I'm gonna, like I said, put my thumb here so I can hold both so it's firm. I can push down, you'll see the filament coming out of the bottom, and I can lift up and pull out my filament. At that point, I'm going to pick a different color. I'm going to stay ABS so my temperature's right. Before I put in the new filament, I always snip it. And then this is kind of tricky. You get better the more you use your printer, but you really don't have to push this lever down much at all. And then as you push, initially it's just hard to get it to the right spot, but when you get a little bit of practice, you'll find where you can push it through. And then just like we did a moment ago, where I pushed it down and was able to get the filament out, you'll be able to do that again. There, it finally slid past, and now you can see I am easily pushing out the blue-white combo, and eventually it becomes simply blue. Once I've gotten it to this point, I like to hit the extrude a couple times so that the mechanism is all working the way it should, and you have got filament extruded. At this point, you've calibrated and you're all set to test your first print. As you dial in your printer, I highly recommend you work with a cube, something super simple that you know what it's going to look like and that it naturally prints fast. I made a cube called Cubed MDH that I always track down. It's a simple centimeter cube. It's going to take 7 minutes to print. I can simply hit print and then click print again once it connects, and it will heat that bed and we'll be able to see it start. And this is where you can test your settings. If your printer is good, it'll come out looking like a cube. If you've got your heat too high, too low, or your bed too low, or you don't have the right distance between your bed and the extruder, this is where you'll start to find that out, and you can start honing your printer's settings. Alright friends, as we wait for the printer to heat up, let me show you one of my favorite lessons. I have designed houses that are small enough that I don't mind printing them. They're not a waste of plastic. And then I've got a You Build It challenge where the students pull these out of the little bin. There's all kinds of different styles. And then their job is they must take a ruler and they must measure and recreate the exact same shape to the exact same measurements. It's a really cool project because a lot of them don't know millimeters well enough as they measure. I do make it easy, and I make them all 10s and 5s and 15s and 20s, but it is a super slick way to get them to build using something that they're touching as they try and recreate it. The number of options you have for building are totally up to you. You can create anything from skyscrapers, whatever you want, you can build. And it's a project that the kids also totally dig. I often brag about how good the printer's working. Just so you know, every printer does have errors. Just silly things like I don't have this enclosed. So when I get a breeze, sometimes it causes issues and knocks something off the printer. Usually I pull my prints out to the front, and I forgot this time, so it's printing back at that back edge. But you can see I'm getting a pretty nice first layer, and I think this is going to print just fine. I've shown you before, but this is one of my favorite modifications. This was an old school desk that was thrown away, and I cut it with a saw so that I can string them all together. And I've got all my reels of plastic on here. I can just slide them across for easy switches. The printer just works awesome with them. It totally made using the Replicator 2X a easier process. I cut a groove in the top of the 2X so that I can bring the filament through instead of coming up from behind and adding spools all the time. It was one of my favorite modifications to the Replicator 2X. I also, just this week, did a new modification to the 2X, and I put a glass plate on top of the 2X bed. And it worked great on Friday, but I want to find one that's just a little bit thinner, because right now I've got the bed down as low as it can. But the other day I saw everybody talking about how cool the glass beds were, and I'm like, oh my gosh, since I manually calibrate the 2X bed, why not try and print on it on glass as well? And that is one of the cool things about 3D printing, is you can come up with ideas and just give them a test. Alrighty, here's another trick. When a print finishes, I hit cancel, and then I tell it X home, and I'm able to get at my print and see how well it turned out. You can see that cube is pretty darn square.
Which leads me to believe that I've got my settings probably as good as I'm gonna get them. So now I'm in search of some feedback to see what you need. If you want me to show more lessons on how I use them in my STEM class, please add those to the comments. Companies, if you got printers you want to test, I am open to test and show off any printers you might have. Hey, thanks everybody for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and looking forward to getting back to you next week.